All right. Good morning. It is Sunday, and not just any Sunday. It's a Sunday as the session in Tallahassee is finally winding down to a totally unappreciated halt, as things don't get done in due time. But let's see if possibly we can find somebody who can right this ship. Maybe a Navy vet could do that. Let's find out. Let's go into the rotation. Now, for those of folks who have not been in Tallahassee, you have the House and you have the Senate. The House is very top down. It's very much leadership tells everybody else what to do, regardless of their ideology, regardless of who's been visiting them and pushing bills to them and things of that sort. And then we have the Senate, which Senator Brandis once told us was like 40 Somalian warlords, basically. Everybody was on their own agenda, on their own time. And that is why it is so important for we have the right people on the Senate so we can balance out the imbalance in the House. And for that, we look forward to talking about to our guest today. First off, let's introduce ourselves. My name is Gary Stein. I'm the political director, policy director, and master of public health. And to my left and downward, our deputy director, the proprietor of Chillum CBD and Mushroom Dispensary, and our pseudo-Cuban, Carlos Angel Ermida. And by pseudo, I mean we can't send him back there. It does not work. And above that,
you tried
we have our executive director coming to us from parts unknown, somewhere at the top of the Beltway in D.C., Chris Cano. Chris, how are things over in possibly Anne Arundel or Montgomery County?
Oh, man, well, the entire DMV is expecting a whiteout over the next 24 hours with a major blizzard. So we'll see how the conditions apply. I mean, there's still snow on the ground from the last snowstorm that's been almost a month ago.
Now, I don't know if you know this. I saw a picture on the internet, which always tells me the truth, which shows, I think it was K Street. It was closed down and the entire block was covered with prayer blankets, and they were doing evening prayer. All the Muslim folks out there in D.C. Now, first off, there was no snow in the picture. Secondly, nobody takes their prayer rugs out onto the street and does a massive evening thing. So it may have been fake. I don't know, but that's
no idea, Gary.
Right now.
I do know that the Monks for Peace, the Buddhist monks, did walk to Annapolis this week and finish up their protest. And things right now throughout the world are a bit crazy. I mean, we have entire carrier groups that have been deployed to the Middle East, and we have a major escalation of forces in the Caribbean, around South America, following the operations in Venezuela. I would say that the most dangerous thing we have right now in regards to foreign policy is somebody's 80-plus-year-old grandpa with slight indications of dementia in charge of the most powerful military force on the planet, and it does not bode well for anybody.
Well, when I was stationed in D.C., working over at Walter Reed, they had a group of monks come in and they built a sand mandala in the middle of the rotunda.
Oh, that's
and cool. It was beautiful and it was calming and there was just a sense of peace around it. And I think we need to have a mandala put into the into the rotunda now, because those things are just crazy. But Tallahassee is just also as crazy as you can imagine. The House actually did pass a bill today to rename I think it's the Fort Lauderdale Airport.
Palm Beach.
It's called the Palm Beach, okay, the smaller airport, in his name, which only costs us a couple $1 million, which we don't have because they're also wanting to cancel all property taxes. So
ironically, the president trademarked the name Donald J. Trump International Airport a week before the bill got passed. So, I don't know what shenanigans are going on in Tallahassee, But between that and the governor of Florida spending $93 million on a porta potty contract for Alligator Alcatraz, on top of the fact that he took, $5 to $10 million in Medicaid overpayments, made sure they got devoted to his wife's charity, and then those funds were later sent to spend against passing Amendment 3. There is so much shenanigans and dirty money happening behind the scenes of our elected officials. We need to put folks in office that have integrity. And so that is a great segue into the guests that we have today.
Absolutely. Go ahead. Do the intro.
Well, we are joined today in studio in Ybor City next to Carlos is Brian Nathan, Navy veteran, electrician, union member, and running for the lieutenant governor's former Senate seat, which is the greater part of Tampa, District 14. Brian, welcome to the rotation.
Thank you for having me.
The crowd loves you.
Brian, you got an amazing resume, brother. I mean, being a vet, being a union guy, being a roughneck electrician. What the hell makes you think you want to get into politics other than to maybe punch some people? Because that's how I feel most days.
Carlos and I were talking about this before we went on the air. Every year, as part of my duties as a union leader, we go up to Tallahassee. We lobby for and against bills. We talk to legislators, in order to, advocate for our members, to protect working class people. And every year you kind of get to see how the sausage is made, because what's on the TV when you're watching the Florida channel is not what's going on in the room. You see legislators having sidebar conversations. They're literally, one time I saw a guy spinning in his seat. They're getting up and leaving, just not paying attention to the residents of Florida that have taken the time out of their day, taken time off work to come up to Tallahassee to express their feelings to their elected officials. And I found it, frankly, disrespectful. But last year, there was a bill, Senate Bill 918, sponsored by former Senator Jay Collins, that would have rolled back labor protections for children, made it easier to work children, 14 and 15-year-olds, longer hours during the week when they're supposed to be in school. And that's what really prompted me to get into this. Every year when I would up, I'd come home and my wife, Tanya, would say, you were angry every time you came back. And when we heard that Jay Collins was going to be the lieutenant governor, I knew I had an opportunity with this special election coming up to jump in and provide the same type of protections and representation that I do for my IBEW brothers and sisters. That's the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, for my neighbors, for my friends, for my family that live in District 14, because right now, like you mentioned, we're kind of winding down for the session. But there are 500,000 Floridians that don't have representation in the Senate. We don't have a senator right now because of the way Jay Collins became the lieutenant governor, and then how long, all 73 days, that it took the governor to announce this special election.
It's funny, I think that happens. Whenever you've got a special election that could possibly go Democratic, the election tends to get pushed farther and farther out. Where when you have a solid red district, you'll find that special election turned on a dime.
Yeah, it's amazing how that happens, isn't it? My opponent, she is a Republican, serving House District 51, which is Eastern Polk, Osceola counties, 60 odd miles down I-4 from District 14. When she announced, it was a matter of days before her special election. This special election to replace her was announced.
One thing that
hold on, time out, Gary, time out. Hold on. I'm trying to process what Brian just said, that the state representative from Eastern Polk County and Osceola is somehow running to be the senator in Tampa.
Yes.
I'm trying to think, I'm thinking of the map in my head, and maybe there's a small strip of gerrymander I'm not processing, but how the fuck does someone who represent Eastern Polk and Osceola managed to qualify to be the senator in Tampa?
So
help me with that, Brian. Walk me through that.
I will. It's not going to be an answer you like, but I'll explain it to you. In Florida, you can register to run in any race. You don't actually have to live in that district until you win an election.
Carpetbagger. Got it.
She's gonna move if she wins or something, or
Well,
she wins, or
I'll just throw this out for your consideration. Her husband has a homesteaded property in South Tampa.
Okay. All right. Got it.
And that homestead tax exemption is a big deal, by the way.
Yes, it is.
So wait. So if her husband is claiming a homestead exemption on the property, then that's supposed to be the primary residence. So then how is she qualified to serve as a state house rep in Eastern Polk then? Because you're supposed to live in your district. Sounds like somebody's being shady with the law.
Hey, we can get her on mortgage fraud, I think.
I mean, look, I'm not here to prosecute. I just want people to represent the communities that they're supposed to serve and live in those communities and have a real stakeholder. Brian, where do you live at in the district? Like, what neighborhood you from, brother?
Town and country. So just kind of north and west of the airport. So
exactly,
pretty much in the middle of the district.
Yeah, I've run in that area for State House back in 2018. I'm born and raised in West Tampa, down the street from Carlos. So, we all know the area very well. That's why I was having a hard time processing that. So, all right, so here you are, someone who lives and works in the district who wants to represent us. You're running to be my senator, to be Carlos's senator. So we got questions. We're glad to have you here. But my first question was, the person who's running against you has zero stake in the district other than clearly, having a house in South Tampa, but working in Polk County when they're supposed to live in Polk County because of the job they have. That's a bit of a stretch. And, what we started this conversation off in that integrity matters. And that's one of the reasons why I'm glad we have you running, because your integrity, as far as I can tell, has been without reproach, from being a union leader to being a Navy veteran. And yet we have people who are, essentially building their career as politicians who are severely lacking it. And the people at the highest levels of politics, both in the state and in Congress and in the White House and on the Supreme Court these days, we see have a severe lack of integrity. And I think that the vast majority of American people want some type of integrity restored to our public processes. Gary, go ahead.
Let's see who's got standing here. Where is your district so people know whether they can vote for you or not?
Okay. The way I describe it is it's most everything in Hillsborough County that's west of 275. It does get a little bit gerrymandered looking right around like the University of Tampa, that kind of area. But it also covers part of New Tampa, Tampa Palms. So yeah, that's it right there.
I'm going to share the screen real quick.
Because
it
doesn't happen.
It goes to the Pinellas County line. It goes to the Pasco County line. It covers South Tampa. So yeah, you can see it right there.
It looks like I'm at Hillsborough County.
I don't see any way that could be gerrymandered in the poll, which, like I said, there's definitely some shenanigans going on with folks wanting to represent the district. Look, man, I appreciate you standing strong and you being a union leader. You understand that working people are consistently seeing their rights and their abilities to advocate under attack. I mean, it's crazy what we've seen. Two public sector unions in the state of Florida under the DeSantis administration. I mean, it went from having a union is in the Constitution of the state of Florida for public sector employees to doing every little thing they can to chip away at that because they're scared of working people having solidarity with one another. I recall my time organizing college professors at University of South Florida, at Hillsborough Community College, at Valencia College, at Seminole State College, college professors throughout Central Florida and even South Florida, down in Broward and Miami-Dade, all the way up to the Panhandle in Chipola College and FAMU, Santa Fe, and understanding that folks who think they're white-collar workers are making the same amount of money as the fast food workers. And then that solidarity clicked for them. And we saw, in a matter of just a couple of years, multiple unions pop up at the various colleges across the state. And now all that work has been turned to dust by the DeSantis administration because you can't even pay your dues anymore out of your paycheck. You can't, you consistently see them trying to decertify unions based off of turnout percentages in elections, which has never been something. It's always been, you get folks to sign enough cards for showing an interest, and then you have an election. And elections are won based on how many people turn out to vote, not the overall majority. If they try to run the elections for office in Florida the way the DeSantis administration is currently trying to make union elections go down, neither him nor any other person in the state legislature would be sitting in office right now, because the majority of voters don't even vote in Florida most elections.
Absolutely. You're talking about Senate Bill 256 from a couple of years ago that directly targeted our brothers and sisters in the public sector side. It was really aimed at the teachers. I mean, let's be honest. The teachers are the biggest union. They're some of the most well-funded unions across the state and across the country. And for your listeners, if they don't know, that bill moved the threshold that you have to reach in an election to 60%. First of all, no other election has a 60% threshold. It doesn't, like you said, it doesn't matter. Governor, state senator, president, you have to hit 50% plus one in every other election. This year, there's a bill where they're changing that. It's not 60% of the people who voted. It's 60% of everybody, essentially every potential member, everybody in the unit.
Everybody who can vote.
Yeah, everybody who can vote. So who shows up? I mean, no election gets that kind of turnout.
No, we're lucky if we get 30%, 35%.
And for some of our listeners at home who are getting high right now, rolling up, probably thinking, what the fuck's this got to do with me? I want to expound on it.
Are you pointing at me?
Look, if they can do this to the union elections, how long is it before they do it to our elections? Because as Brian pointed out, Florida is the unique testing ground for all these bad policies when it comes to the American Republic. We're the only state where citizen-led ballot initiatives, like wanting to legalize weed, require 60% of the vote. And they passed a bill, for union members, and now they want to go even further and say you need 60% of all eligible voters to adopt it. How long before they change that thing from unions to that same test to us in our direct democracy? How long is it before you will never be able to vote to legalize weed, because you need 60% of Floridians who are eligible to vote for it? Because this is exactly where we're headed. And if you don't see the writing on the wall, it's time to take another shot at Cafe Con Leche this morning. Yes, now I'm looking at you, Gary.
There you go.
There is actually a bill that's out this year. I believe it's House Bill 1387, I want to say. That's going after private sector unions, my union. So electricians, plumbers, pipe fitters, anybody who isn't a public employee. So a lot of our contractors get tax credits essentially for doing the work. That's how the funding structures work. These contractors will have to sign an agreement with whatever government organization is funding it, that you will not participate, you will not recognize a card check. And I assume you know what a card check is. It seems like you've done the work. So if they do recognize a card check, now they have to give all that tax money back, all those tax credits, whatever the public funding structure was, that money goes back to the government. So you could be talking about millions of dollars that made this project possible. Now it's coming out of a contractor's pocket. So they're not going to be able to hire anybody. It could put them out of business. So this is going after the building trades in particular.
Yeah. This is personal for me because my family comes from pipe fitters and plumbers. I come from a union background, and my grandfathers, both their generations, did the work and participated civically and built, were able to build from the working class into being politically active men. And just like you, brother, as served in the military, like there is a direct assault on social mobility with these laws. It seems like they want us all to go back to being working peasants for the sake of their campaign donors. And that is not going to fly, which is why I'm glad we have you on the show today, because I think that your race, being a special election, is not necessarily getting the attention that it critically deserves. And that is by design, because the powers that be don't want people paying attention to these major issues. Hell, Ron DeSantis doesn't want your voice in Tallahassee, which is why it took so long to do this special election, because he knows that they're on the hook. And he tried to find the best MAGA banner waiver that he could that's going to fall in line with his agenda, which is why he had to go all the way out to Polk County to find one to run here in Tampa. So I'm glad that you're standing up. So, we got the character part of it. We know that you're running for office. Let's dive into policy. And the most important policy to us and our listeners is the fact that all the way back in 2017, this legislature voted to enact medical cannabis laws based off a constitutional amendment that the voters passed, that it took 2 times and a boatload of money from John Morgan and his donor network to get over the top. And that is another issue that I had the opportunity to work personally on and collect petitions and get over the top. Carlos, Gary, everybody put in their sweat equity to make sure that happened. But what we haven't seen is a system that actually addresses the shortcomings of prohibition, because people are still being fired from their jobs.
Mhm.
Parents are still having issues with their kids and child protective services. There are issues around, you can still lose your organ transplant or get kicked off the list for being a legal medical patient. And then we still don't have access to grow your own medicine. You're at the mercy of whatever is being sold to you through a medical marijuana treatment center in Florida, rather than being able to grow your own organic, well-bred medicine. You have to worry about whatever they're paying their workers just above minimum wage to grow it in poor conditions. So and no idea of what they're spraying on it, because there's no truth in labeling laws in Florida either. So these are the major issues surrounding cannabis prohibition that the Florida legislature has ignored for the better part of a decade. And so whenever we have a candidate on the show, we need to bring it to their attention. So Brian, what are your thoughts on the slew of issues that I just threw out into you, man?
I'll try to tackle them all, but if I miss one, keep me honest and circle back around.
I got a list, no problem.
So absolutely. With the citizen-led ballot initiative that passed, the way it was implemented, to me, was just absolutely insane. Like, the citizens wanted this. They voted for this. They met the ridiculous threshold of 60% that we had to get. So it seemed like the legislature and the governor went out of their way to undermine it in whatever way they could. They couldn't ignore it, but we're going to do it in the worst possible way. So we've seen what's happened in other states in terms of tax revenue. When you look at recreational marijuana, that was the impetus, obviously, for a lot of this. We need to get back to that and actually enacting legislation that respects the will of the people. So I don't know how that gets now with the temperature in Tallahassee. Excuse me. But first of all, we need to get back to that and honor the spirit and the intention of the ballot proposition that was passed, that was approved by the people.
It wouldn't be the first time that Tallahassee has kind of like thwarted the will of the people.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about the felons getting their voting rights back.
Restored. Yeah. They made that incredible. These people who to jail society, sexual crimes, they are citizens of this country. They should be. Absolutely insane to me that they can't, especially people who did crimes in the past for things that are now legal. Like, we need to find a way to undo some of that damage that's been done.
And you mentioned John Morgan, who put a lot of money into some amendments. He also helped pass the minimum wage amendment. And yet this session, they actually had a bill that would allow people to be paid less than minimum wage for less than a year, just, to make sure they stay poor enough to get evicted from their home before they can get a chance to get to full pay.
Yeah, that bill, I take particular offense to that bill because we have an apprenticeship program. It's designed to target people in training programs, what they call internships. Apprenticeship is actually defined in Florida state law, in statute. Internship is something they just made up. It doesn't exist in law. So people in these training programs can opt out of the state minimum wage, which is $15 an hour right now, going to 15 in September, and elect, and I hate that word, but elect to take this federal minimum wage of $7.25, which is a 50% pay cut. So what is going to prevent people from being hired, paid this lesser amount while they're in a, air quotes, training program, get fired, and then they're going to find someone to replace them at this lower rate? I don't know what kind of protections they're trying to put in place, if any, to prevent unscrupulous people from doing that. But it seems like this is just another way in which Florida is racing to the bottom. As someone earlier mentioned, Project 2025, Florida is a testing ground for that. So if you want to see what's going to happen in the rest of the country, America, look at Florida. Look at what our legislature and our governor are doing here. It's going to come to you next.
Brian, I'm glad you said that, because my day-to-day work, I live in Tampa, but I work in the DMV. And everything I see when I'm away from home going down, I end up applying to my daily work. I saw DeSantis last year, a couple years ago, work to pass a junk fee bill for landlords. So when I was working on a rent stabilization package for local government in Montgomery County, I made sure we outlawed junk fees. I was talking to the Senate president of Maryland a couple days ago, and I said, look, you got to see what they're doing down there in Florida right now around unions. And we need to enshrine some things in the state's constitution to make sure the day that the power flips, that your party's no longer in power, working people are still protected. Because the fact of the matter is that as much as I try to believe that there is a political party for working people in this country, they continue to go at great lengths to prove me wrong. And regardless of what party is in power. And I think that is the most important thing that working people need to realize, is that it is not about picking a political team. It is about standing for the right candidates who are on our team. And Brian, you clearly are one of those candidates that are on our team. So, give us your wish list, brother. If the existing power dynamics in Tallahassee weren't necessarily the test, right? If you had the ability to pass real policies that benefited people, what would be your top priority? What was the one thing you want to leave as you're leaving office and say, hey man, I did that. Look what I did to leave Florida better than the way I found it. Share that with us.
There are a lot of things. So I'm going to take an opportunity, if you don't mind. I'll back that's Bill 256 we talked about earlier. Basically restore the right for Floridians to organize and have a union. Because like you mentioned, it's in the state constitution, 1 Section 6. It's right there. We have the right to have a union. And this whole thing blows are paid. We are the third most popular state in the country. We pay at least this.
Oh man, Gary, I think we lost the feed from the studio.
Good. I thought it was me.
No. I thought it was me too, but the Wi-Fi in the studio is freezing up.
I think we're getting back.
I feel like it's a cyber attack, man. This is planned. They don't want us getting Brian's message out there, man.
The right to work people are coming at us. Yeah.
You guys can't hear all? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you, Carlos. You sound like Megatron.
Okay, we're gonna. Okay.
Yeah. Well, me and Gary will keep the mic hot while y'all go out and come back in. That'll work. So
yeah, you should know, Brian, that you are in a union safe space right now. Between you being IBEW, Chris being SEIU, and I'm AFSME, because somebody's got to be AFSME. we need to let people know that unions are not Antifa, but unions are a level of representative government, essentially. Because sometimes you have to have a unified voice for your own cause. And it's not a matter of unions being Republican or being Democrat. As Christian said, it's not about party. It's about people.
Yeah.
I mean, my grandfather was in the painters union. He got there when the Purple Gang closed down in Detroit in the 1920s, and they got him a job as a painter, and they got him a position in the painters union at the same time. Because especially with him, who was a Ukrainian immigrant with little or no schooling, to be able to get a job and to have a safe life, that's what made America great at that point in time.
All right. Yeah. Are we good now? Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, we're good, Brian.
Good.
I'm glad y'all got that. I hate to say it, but Spectrum sucks. They suck.
There's no better way to say that when the outside looks like this right here.
Yeah.
Just a few clouds, that's enough to take us out of commission.
That's nuts.
Let's get the camera on Brian again.
All right.
Yeah. So Brian, man, you were just running down your wish list of policies that are important to working people that you like to see, enacted in your time that you get to serve.
Did you hear the bit about 256?
You mentioned about wanting to restore the rights
Yeah.
to actually having a union in practice rather than it just being on paper in the
Yeah.
Constitution. I mean, the degradation of the laws in Florida and civil rights to working people are just nuts. And you're right, they extrapolate everything in Florida to see what they can test and get through at a bigger level, with the federal government. And it's just sad, that one, we're the guinea pigs for everything that's anti or rather that's pro-corporate and anti-person. I mean, look at our cannabis program. We're one of the few states that has a pro-corporate cannabis program that is so pro-corporate. It's just sad.
Our program has regressed. There was a time when I could buy whatever the hell I want whenever I wanted, and now Gary's messaging us about not being able to get a pre-roll.
Well, actually, what happened was I went ahead. I was checking my my allocation, and I noticed at a time when I went into a particular, I'm not going to say which MMTC it was, Jungle Boys. I got 2 pre-rolls, and I looked at my allocation, and it said that I had bought 2 Ace. Now, normally that doesn't affect me personally, except for the fact that when you're only allowed 2.5 ounces for 35 days, that means that if somebody takes what is 0.5 grams and turns it into a 3.5 gram allocation, that means every time you buy a pre-roll, you've just lost an eighth of your allocation. And that is, again, a situation where either it's coming from the corporate level or it's coming from OMMU who's fucking with you.
So Gary, just so the viewers are clear, was this a half a gram pre-roll or a 1 gram pre-roll?
It was a half gram.
A fucking half gram. So you're telling me that you bought 2 pre-rolls that equaled a total of a gram, and they dinged you for an eighth for each one, which means they dinged you for 7 grams, even though you only had a total of 1 gram, meaning you lost 6 grams on your allowance.
Yeah. And what's even worse is that I didn't even pay for the pre-rolls. I actually had gotten cards from Dab Day. They gave me a free pre-roll over at Jungle Boy. So I figured I'd go over there and check it out. And so I used my free pre-roll cards. And all of a sudden, I find I have a quarter of an ounce less than I had before.
To the non-smoking voter, this might seem as though, was that a big deal? Well, I want to explain for a minute to folks who may not be medical patients. Number one, how much you consume, it should be between you and your doctor, not having some type of arbitrary cap that makes Ron DeSantis and his donors feel comfortable. Number two, there should, whether it's the actual corporate actors in the industry or whether, like you said, Gary, it's the actual government itself, you should not be getting dinged for 6 grams of a medicine's allowance when you only bought 1 gram. That is ludicrous in any way, shape, or form. That's like for those out there who might take Xanax and you get a 30-day supply and they ring it up as a 90-day prescription for you. Just to translate that to folks, that doesn't make any sense in the world.
It's not like Medicaid fraud doesn't happen in Florida. It happens at the highest levels of government, for God's sakes.
Oh, I mean, Gary,
that guy we brought in as governor because we want a governor who's more of a businessman than an actual governor, which really didn't work out. I want people to know. Just whatever you say, let's have somebody in government pretend they're actually a businessman who's not in government.
What hurts me, Gary, the most is that there are so many politicians these days who use their service as a checkbox. Ron DeSantis was a JAG, right? A lawyer in the military. It really bothers me to see the lack of integrity from him, to see the lack of integrity from the Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins, whose former seat this is, that we have Brian in here today running for. And so when I said Brian is a man whose military experience points to his integrity, I know that for a fact, but I don't see it in the other folks that we're currently seeing holding power. And it scares a lot. It scares the shit out of me. It goes all the way to the top, all the way up to our Secretary of War. The SecDef, you think that you can trust guys. But Brian, just as well as I do that some of the guys we serve with, all of them don't take integrity first as a core value. Some of them are look to cut corners. Some of them don't necessarily care. And those are the ones that we're currently seeing in office, those type of guys, not the ones that are going to do the right thing when no one's watching. And so I just wanted to get your 2 cents as to what do you think about all this shenanigans that we see going on with our public dollars right now?
There's a piece of advice that I got when I first jumped into this race, because this is my first time as a candidate, just so everybody knows. When you're doing this work, when you're trying to be a politician, when you're doing political work, you always need to leave your constituents, the people you serve or want to serve, they have to be at the center of everything you're doing. When you replace those people and you're more concerned with how it affects you, what it benefits you, something's gone wrong. And that's kind of what I'm seeing both at the state level and at the federal level, that we, the regular people, and I include myself in that, have been largely forgotten or at least supplanted by people trying to serve their own interest or the interest of their donors. And I really do think the cure to that is 2 things. Education. We need to vastly increase the funding to our education system, and then hold people accountable when they don't do the things that they need to do to actively make our lives better, because ultimately that should be the point of government. At the bare minimum is to make people's lives better.
No, let's be clear about what's going on in Florida right now. We have a legislative branch that has a supermajority in both houses, which means it makes it relatively difficult for Democrats to get bills moved forward unless they've got the full support, like nearly 100% or 120% from the majority party. And that, I think that's one of the reasons that why our guest, who originally was scheduled for today, Fentress, has such a magnanimous job trying to right the ship on a situation where the minority is a super minority.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping that can change, because in order to have representative government, you have to represent all sides.
Yeah. And the thing that people don't realize about a supermajority, everybody throws that term around, but what does it mean in practicality? So when there's a supermajority for either party, they can suspend the rules. So a bill doesn't have to make all the committee stops that it's required to. They can cut off discussion. And I've seen it where, somebody walks up to the podium, you've got 10 seconds, you've got 30 seconds, no discussion. They just keep moving it through. So they can take a bill that makes one committee stop, push it straight to the floor, have a floor vote. This race, the reason that there have been some shenanigans, like you said, around this race is when I win, we'll be 1 vote away, 1 senator away from breaking the supermajority in the Senate. When that happens, we're going to...
The crowd loves it.
We're going to be able to enforce those rules. And to be clear, this is not a magic wand. The Democrats aren't going to get everything they want on their wish list, but we can start making government work again, that it follows the rules, that people can actually speak for or against the bill. They can hold their elected officials accountable in a way that we can't right now, because the Republicans get to run roughshod over everybody. If you're not on their program, they really don't care.
And when we say Republican, I want to be clear. We're not talking about the everyday, guy who's sweating his ass off, working 9 to 5, and who happens to vote in the red column. We're talking about a specific small group of people who hold power, who have a certain donor base that they're loyal to, which is not the same loyalty to the base of people that elect them, which is why we see such a disconnect in the state of Florida between policy and public opinion on so many issues.
We're going to see more of that, because in April, we're going to have a special session that's going to cover redistricting. But at the time, session ends March 13th. This election isn't until March 24th. So when I win, I won't even get to go to Tallahassee to serve in the regular session.
Which means vote by mail ballots are hitting people's mailboxes this week.
I got mine last night.
I love that you keep saying when I win. So that's awesome. I like the confidence. I just want to take a moment just to point out the voting habits of Democrats in the Senate. How often a bill that a Democrat shouldn't vote for, still it goes voted unanimously for in the Senate. It happens way too often where Democrats vote against their own policies just because they're voting in a Republican ran Senate.
Well, let's look at D14. I mean, this is a district which has swung in both directions. It was democratically held, then it was Republican held. And let's talk about the fact that we have a district that has right in its middle one of the most political bars is called the Independent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this district, if you look at the voter rolls, it's roughly a third, and a third. So a third for the Republicans, a third for the Democrats, and a third for your MPAs or independents. That's where this district is going to be won. The Republicans do have a slight advantage in terms of voter registration, but that's narrowing. It's the MPAs, the independents, the people that don't feel at home in either party that are going to swing this election. And I would ask them, and you'll get this reference in a second, but are you better now than you were 4 years or 8 years ago? Bear in mind, my opponent has been in the House for 8 years. She is the chair of the Health and Human Services Committee. Is your health insurance any better? Are your taxes any better? Is your property insurance any better? She's been there for 8 years. Has your life gotten demonstrably better?
Nope.
With the people who are currently in office? Why would you want to send them back?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we really would like to see some change in Tallahassee. It gets tiring when you're constantly having to deal with the kind of bills like we're having this year. When we have so many issues that need to be addressed. They're working on fetal personhood.
Or renaming an airport.
Yeah, or renaming airports that'll cost millions of dollars. Exactly right.
We do have a question in the comments, and that kind of goes into how can we see change. Marlon Davis on Facebook wants to ask Brian, how do we take action?
So this looks different for everybody, and you get to determine your level of action. I would say the first thing you can do is make sure you're registered to vote. If you like to vote by mail, understand that you have to renew that request to vote by mail every 2 years. They're not going to let you know if it's expired. You have to go forth and do that yourself.
Yeah.
But either way, make sure you vote. That is, I tell my girls that that's your basic civic duty as a citizen is to vote. People fought and died for this right. Let's exercise it. Be informed. If you want to come out and door knock, you can go to my website. I think we had it up on the screen a minute ago. We're door knocking right now every weekend. It's going to roll out to almost every day as we get closer to the election, because I think today we are at either 29 or 30 days. I have to go back and do the math until the election. Find a group of like-minded people that you connect with, and you can go out and door knock. You can make phone calls. You can write postcards if that's your thing. But getting out there, voting, talking to your friends, talking to your neighbors. I understand politics is sticky and it can be ugly and messy for a lot of people, especially when you're talking to family, but you need to have those conversations. I do that every day with my members who, we don't agree on everything, but you need to have those conversations. There are ways to do that can help smooth some of those rough edges, because everybody feels real protective of their political beliefs right now. Don't talk about politicians. Talk about policies. That's what we do at the IBEW. So we look at policies that specifically affect, your health insurance, your retirement, your wages, your working conditions. All right. So we've identified those policies. Now let's go look at our current politicians. How did they vote on bills around those policies? And that's how you start breaking through some of the noise, some of the identity politics that we're dealing with right now. So again, it's voting and then having those discussions with your friends and families about policies and how they affect you.
Now, as a boomer, I have this group called AARP that's constantly stalking me.
Yeah.
But they do have a saying that they put out to their members: vote the person, not the party.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is actually vote the policies, not the person.
Well, it is the person, but you start with the policies. You identify those things that matter most to you and the bills and policies around those. And then, okay, how did Brian vote? How did Marco Rubio vote, or whoever? And once you start identifying that, you'll actually see whether or not these people's values align with yours, which is, I think, really what we need to get to, so we can get away from the R&D, the blue and red, the left and right divide. Because a politician, and I say that as a politician, can say whatever. I mean, they can, and they do. But what they can't hide is their record. So look at their record, analyze their record. That's what you have to do, because they can tell you whatever they want, but their actions will tell you where their actual values lie. And that's what we need to look at. And that's what we need to hold people accountable to.
I love that. I love that. I've always said that. don't look at like platform, look at like how this politician has actually used their vote in the past, because it'll surprise you. I honestly feel if more people paid attention to that, there would be a great deal of upset in our leadership. We constantly have people voting against what they actually ran for.
We need to hold people accountable. That's really
Yeah.
what this comes down to, is that everybody knows politicians make promises on the campaign trail. And the reality is, given the way politics are structured right now, it's impossible to satisfy all those promises. There's just too much division. But on those core issues that are important to you, dear listener, make sure you hold your elected officials accountable to those positions. You're never going to agree with a politician on 100%. That's impossible. You're not going to agree 100% with your spouse, with your friends, with your neighbors. But there are a handful of core issues that, for most people, that this is what it takes to earn my vote. And if they haven't upheld those promises, you need to go ask them, go talk to them. I will say from personal experience that going in and talking to elected officials or their staff is a lot of the time the way that you move the needle, because just like in every other facet of your life, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So if they're hearing from a bunch of people about a particular piece of legislation that it's good, it's bad, it's whatever, that's going to influence them. So, and I will tell you from conversations I've had with elected officials that sometimes actually talking to their staffers is better than talking to them directly, because when that staffer is telling them, my phone has been ringing off the hook for the last 3 days about Bill 1, 2, 3, 4, and why we should vote no on it, why we should vote yes on it. They really do pay attention to that, because it's sucking up their staffers' time. And if that's all the staffer is hearing, it really does move the needle in the calculus these people are making.
Is there a threshold where the nuisance that we create by contacting them and our public and civic rights supersedes the interests of special interests who actually funded that person's or that politician's campaign? And by the way, you're talking to two guys, as in Chris and myself, who actually do go to the Board of Electors site and check to see who was sponsoring, who's been putting the major money into campaigns. I know it's a terrible thing.
Yeah, there is, but it's not like a hard line. It's going to be different for each elected. And when you're talking about donors, how much do they rely on that particular donor's money? So more is always better. But when you kind of cross that threshold, like, there's no magic number I've got for you there, unfortunately.
Well, Brian, we appreciate you, doing something that most people don't have the time to do, is to step up and run for office and say, look, I don't like the way things are going and I want to do something about it. And we appreciate that. For so many folks who are working, all day long, working multiple jobs, even educating yourself on who's running, what are the issues at stake, because you just know what your pocketbook is experiencing and how much food is on your family's table. So if folks want to educate themselves better, NORML actually has a voter guide called Smoke the Vote. It's our Smoke the Vote guide. And we have every elected official in Florida with various grades on it. So if in some of these folks, we need the grassroots to tell us more about. So if in your area, we don't know necessarily enough about your local politician, if you've advocated for them and they shut the door on you, then Rick Scott, every time I send him an email about legalizing something, he always tells me, basically to go fuck myself in nice civil language. So, there's a lot to be said about it. So again, you can actually click on it and tell NORML more about your local elected officials and how you feel about their stances on various issues. And I think that's important. So I just wanted to all the voters out there and folks listening, if you don't know enough, check out NORML Smoke the Vote guide. And again, it's a grassroots guide. So be a part of it. Take action. Let folks know in your neck of the woods whether or not your rep is up to snuff when it comes to cannabis policy. Like we got Brian here on the hot seat today in the rotation, and we're going to be bringing you many more guests over the course of this election season to be in the hot seat as well. So
yeah, and we have our own pet issues that we try to push forward. I think as a somebody who's running for SD14, you should know we're trying to get the salami out of Cuban sandwiches, even at the West Tampa sandwich shop.
I think you might have a riot down here.
Gary is lucky that I'm all the way in another state right now. How dare you, Gary, attack the salami in the sandwich?
Good on you, Gary. Good on you. We need to get
I eat the
Carlos, we will have none of your Hialeah heresy in Tampa's Cuban sandwiches.
Nah,
Okay.
that is an Italian meat, and it does not belong. It belongs in a mixto sandwich, not a Cuban sandwich. Thank you.
Okay, well, you
Actually,
know what?
we-
I've
we
been
go-
to
we go
Cuba,
to
and I can
Freitas over
tell
here.
you,
A riot,
I have been to
riot may
Cuba
break out
recently.
in Ybor, but the rest of the world will be in peace.
I will tell you, I went to Cuba in 2017, and the vast majority of folks, there's not even enough deli meat to make a Cuban sandwich or a mixed or any of that in those shops. So the fact that our fat American asses are arguing whether or not how much there should be 3 or 2 types of pork in a sandwich.
They apparently don't even have power to heat the sandwich up anymore.
Exactly. So that, I mean, that just, I make that joke because it shows how trivial a lot of these fights that we have are in politics when you put into perspective what other people in the world are experiencing. And you know, the fact is that we still need to fight for making the world a better place, to improving the lives of everyday folks. And I think that, again, Brian, that's something that you want to do and something you want to see happen. And I commend you for that. You know, Gary was just touching on, we got, you know, we got trivial issues, but we got important issues too. I want to go back again to the issue around parental rights.
Mhm.
You know, in the state legislature right now, we've been working to get bills passed for the past several years. The fact that you're a medical marijuana patient, you could still have that used against you in a custody hearing. You can, you know, the fact that you even have cannabis in the house could trigger some type of CPS investigation. Florida needs a record, a law in the books, like some of the other states have, that say that that can't be used against you, that just being a medical patient is not a crime. And Florida still treats it like such. I mean, the fact that you can get kicked off an organ transplant list, that we see medical discrimination. You know, if you're someone who has been an opioid addict and you're on opioid pills, and then all of a sudden you said, you know what, I read this study, I want to try medical cannabis, and your pain management doctor doesn't like that, they can drop you. You know, so there's medical discrimination happening. And then the most important one, I think, that we still continue to fight for and we have not seen movement on is employment discrimination. Too many people are being fired from their jobs or precluded from jobs, and they're following the law. They're doing what's right. And it's all because we have an outdated drug testing model, both in the state of Florida and federally, because having cannabis in your system is not an indication of impairment. You know, the fact is that you could have smoked cannabis on the weekend and then you show up on Monday, you're still gonna test positive in your analysis. Those are not valid tests in the 21st century. What is a valid test of impairment is giving someone a 90-second test on an iPad or a smart device, and it lets you determine whether or not they're impaired without even having to be so, infringing on their personal privacy of taking bodily fluids. You can see if someone's cognitively there with it by a simple test on the touch screen. So we need to really update our policies around cannabis and what's happening with legal cannabis patients in this state. So Brian, I hope those are issues that you're willing to champion once we put you in there.
I just want to take a moment and jump in, and just in the spirit of your question, Kano, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I had a little camera issue while you were asking the question, and that's because there was actually a protest walking by in Ybor about fentanyl deaths, and calling for the government to do something about issues with pharmaceutical drugs. So, just in the spirit of your question, throw that spirit in there.
Yeah, we actually deal with the drug testing issue, like you mentioned. So at the IBEW, we don't drug test; our employers do, and for a lot of them, it's not even their policy; it's the client's policy that we're dealing with. So it's like 3 steps removed from our members when they join membership, because we do work at power plants and hospitals and some dangerous places. But a lot of these employers are saying, if you come to me with a medical marijuana card, like, that's fine, but you have to tell me up front, because they do drug test. But again, sometimes we're dealing with, it's not even the employer, it's the client that's hiring our contractors to do the work. And there's nothing I can do about that as like a union leader, but we definitely need to start looking at addressing it more holistically at the state level, because right now we kind of have this patchwork thing going on, and that kind of leads into this idea of home rule and preemption. I know that's been an issue for, I believe it's been an issue for NORML. Has it? No.
Yeah, absolutely, because they want to have state laws that impact the local localities. So if localities want to do things like decriminalize, they could possibly overrule that.
Yeah, we dealt with that directly, not for decriminalization purposes, but when the baseball stadium was going to go over into St. Pete, I won't give you the whole bloody saga about it, but there were lawsuits back and forth about whether or not we could have apprenticeship requirements on that. And the day that we were actually going to go speak to city council, the legislators passed a bill that basically said you can't control the conditions of employment. So that undermined all the work we've done for almost 3.5 years over there, trying to get registered apprentices on those job sites. And it's just this used to be a tenet of conservative politics that, the government closest to the people knows their needs best. But now we're seeing Tallahassee governing from a top-down fashion to cities and counties and municipalities about what they can do in their own communities. And then at the same time, telling the federal government, you can't do that. You can't come in here and tell us what to do. It's really interesting and incredibly frustrating, this idea that the cities don't know the best, the state does, but the federal government can't tell the state what to do. And constantly watching this push and pull that the state government is engaging in with local governments and the federal government. I'd like to get back to more of a model where your county commission, your city councils are the ones making some of these decisions, because they know their citizens, they know their needs, they know the budget, they know everything that's going on. Up in Tallahassee, we're not going to know that.
I think also our executive branch here in Florida need to stop trying to influence the vote on citizen initiatives. I mean, that itself is egregious.
That money they took, that $10 million that they started playing shell games
they
with,
knocked out
moving around.
two very important amendments, that and the woman's right to their own body.
Bodily autonomy, and the marijuana amendment. Yeah.
I mean, regardless of how people feel about, the existing market, right? We should all agree that democracy itself should be untouched by influence of the people who are, running the government, right? It should be us. The ballot box is supposed to be a sacred right, and yet that right is consistently under attack from the powers that be.
Yes, it seems like basic democratic processes are being subverted to serve the whims, the needs, the wants of the people that are supposed to be held responsible by the electorate, rather than the other way around. So we could talk about, property taxes, property insurance all day. That's a big issue that I keep hearing on the campaign trail. Like, they're talking about getting property taxes, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds good, but who's going to pave your streets? How are the cops going to get paid? How are when you call EMS, you want someone to show up? You want fire department to show up to put out your house when it's on fire? That gets paid through property taxes. And just this idea that they can control everything from Tallahassee is highly problematic on a variety of levels.
Yeah, I can say, and I know I'm going to shake myself for saying this, but I agree with DeSantis in the fact that he's going to various states and talking about an amendment to actually have all states have balanced budgets, and hopefully the federal government have a balanced budget. But there is also kind of a devil in the details in regards to that as well, isn't there?
Oh, it's always in the details. They like to highlight the top line, but what are they sneaking in that you're not going to see on the headlines? That's in the details. Like, these type of things have to be closely looked at, because, again, I don't want to sound too alarmist, but it's always like, what are they really trying to do? That's the questions I'm asking.
Well said, Brian. Brian, with a couple minutes left, man, why don't you just close us out? Tell folks how they can get involved in your campaign. Tell us how they can support your efforts, and of course, when is the election? Because it's right on the horizon.
It is March 24th is the election. There will be early voting, so if you're not going to get your vote by mail ballot, early vote. You can go where you can find out more about me, more about the race. You can contribute. On the events tab, we always have, where we're door knocking, where we're canvassing, that type of thing. There is a countdown if you want to find out when the election is. So 30 days, 7 hours, and 17 seconds. Yeah, I'm not counting or anything, right? So if you want to contribute, you want to door knock, you want to come out and have a good time. We just had Gay Velamont from the Panhandle down yesterday. We went and knocked a bunch of doors. Amazing lady. I hope to see more from her in the coming
Yep, she's a friend of the show. We've had her on before, so we're looking forward to continue to highlight elected officials from around the state. But brother, you're running to be our senator in our backyard, so we're glad to have you on the show, and we wish you the best of luck, man, to go out there and win this thing.
Thank you for having me, and I'll come back anytime you guys want. Just let me know, and maybe we can talk about some more stuff just besides an election. Actually get into the details. That'd be great.
Yeah. Well, let's have you back in the late spring, early summer after a victory, after you get your orientation done as a freshman senator, and we'd love to hear what policies you're going to have on the horizon for us in the coming year.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Carlos, it's time for the normal news, brother. All right. Well, at the top of the news hour, I think this is important to talk about. Federal survey data that has been published in the journal Addictive Behaviors shows that cannabis use by young people continues a decades-long decline. Research affiliated with the University of Connecticut assessed data from the Center for Diseases Control Youth Risk Behavior Survey, analyzing over 254,000 high school students' responses from 1991 to 2023, which means me and Carlos' responses are probably in there. Carlos, I know that your responses in high school would definitely be different than mine around cannabis, because I didn't start smoking until I got to college. But overall results show that the lifetime cannabis use that rose from 1991 peaked in 99. Shout out to millennials, 47.3%, and subsequently has decreased, with 30.1% of adolescents reporting ever using cannabis in 2023. The study's authors ended up concluding that similarly, while over 1/4 of U.S. adolescents reported recent cannabis use in 99, by 2023, less than 1/5 did. Overall, early age cannabis use also similarly decreased. Well, the sensational claim that we're seeing from certain politicians in certain political parties saying that adult use legalization laws are actually linked to greater increase by teens is simply not backed by the government's own data and research. These findings ought to reassure any lawmaker or prospective lawmaker, any candidate, that legally accessing cannabis in a regulated manner that is safe and effective does not inadvertently impact young people's habits. All right, I think it's important for us to realize that there is even more data, recent state-specific data that has been published in the American Journal of Preventive Medicine show that fewer cannabis-related school disciplinary incidences occur following legalization. And these are investigators affiliated with the University of Massachusetts at Amherst and Johns Hopkins University's Bloomberg School of Public Health, which Gary is an alumni of. And this assessed trends in cannabis-related disciplinary instances in Massachusetts public schools following their marijuana medicalization and adult use legalization programs. Researchers identified statistically significant decreases in cannabis-related disciplinary incidences after both medical and recreational legalization. And this decrease marked a reversal from prior year's trends when the CDIs were steadily increasing. So again, if you legalize it the right way, you're going to see kids' use rates go down. And I think that, again, this is a very important thing to talk about, because what we're seeing right now is a lot of reefer madness being published, especially by the New York Times. And in the past week, NORML has had to respond to some really shitty op-eds that the New York Times continues to put out there. In a recent commentary, the New York Times editors opined that states that have rushed to legalize without adequately regulating it. However, state marijuana markets are already highly regulated, and many of the options that were proposed by the New York Times editors are either redundant or inadvertently would strengthen the illicit marketplace. And for instance, the New York Times laments that adult use cannabis products are not subject to sufficient taxation. look, what do we know about when you overly tax a product in the legal market? Folks are going to go to the legacy market because they're not paying taxes on it. Hell, I know that when I was in Canada, one of the most interesting things was the amount of taxes that you pay at the adult use market. If you go back to our show from February 8th, a couple of weeks back, we actually had one of the native First Nations cannabis dispensary owners on there. They don't pay their taxes. I really like buying from them. Okay, I also like getting gas on their property because you don't pay taxes on that. All right, but the truth is most states do impose taxes on their cannabis products that far surpass those imposed upon other goods, including alcohol. And in some states, consumers face a tax burden of nearly 40% on their cannabis products if they choose to pay it and go to that. In many cases, excess taxes actually steer consumers away from the legal markets. And then the Times also alleges that the so-called big weed is pushing products designed to be appealing to children by mimicking trademark brands. That is absolute bullshit. That allegation is wrong. Okay. Look, in Florida, in most medical states, in most regulated states, there are laws that say the packaging has to be so plain. It's usually a white Mylar bag. All right. What they're talking about is that the unregulated market is making products and bagging appealing to children. And there's no way to crack down on that other than to arrest those folks. So, I mean, when it comes to these unregulated markets, everything that we see the New York Times asking for is essentially bullshit, that they're prohibition talking points. And there is a lot of negative, anti-cannabis groups, pro-prohibition groups that have a lot of dark money flowing into them right now that are trying to repeal in multiple states at the moment the ability to see medical cannabis, to see adult use cannabis. And they're actually going to be on the ballot in some of these states come this November, which is really sad, because what we are seeing is that folks are realizing and waking up to the benefits of the plant beyond just the euphoric nature of consuming, high THC strains. In fact, an analysis shows that over 1/3 of U.S. adults acknowledge having consumed CBD products based on data published in the Journal of Cannabis Research. Investigators at Stanford University and the University of California at San Diego surveyed a nationally representative sample of adults regarding their CBD and other plant-derived or synthetic cannabinoid use, and more than 35% acknowledge that they have consumed CBD, indicating that they use it primarily to mitigate pain, relieve anxiety, or improve sleep. Fewer than 5% of respondents actually acknowledge having consumed products containing cannabinoids like CBN or CBG, and nearly 8% of respondents have used Delta 8 THC products. Most respondents said they did so primarily for recreational purposes. You know why folks are using Delta 8? Probably because it's not legal for Delta 9 as for adult use in their state. And that is really what we have seen when it comes to folks utilizing synthetic cannabinoids as well, like HHC, which is hexahydrocannabinol, that we've seen. Both products are mood altering. But the fact is that if you have a state that has adult use regulated safe cannabis and it's easy to access, it's not overtaxed, folks are going to utilize that versus going to the novel cannabinoid market. And I mean, it just makes sense. So if we would just legalize it, it makes a lot of sense. And if you want to know why, well, two clear studies, medical studies that are important. Observational data published in the Journal of Anesthesia, Analgesia, and Critical Care shows that plant-derived THC extracts reduce fibromyalgia-related pain. These are coming from Italian investigators assessing the safety and efficacy of THC-dominant cannabis extracts in a cohort of 65 patients that suffering from fibromyalgia. And the study participants, on average, had lived with the disease for 7 years and were generally unresponsive to conventional pharmacological therapies. Patients in studied administered THC extracts 3 times a day for 6 months, and on average, participants experienced a 2.6% reduction in pain on a 10-point numerical rating scale. The improvements were most pronounced in younger patients. 6 patients elected to discontinue the study because of the self-reported side effects, which include dry mouth, headaches, drowsiness, and impaired thinking. In December, British researchers published longitudinal data finding that the adjunctive use of cannabis preparations provided sustained improvements in fibromyalgia patients' anxiety, sleep, and overall quality of life, with numerous other studies reporting similar results. You can check out NORML.org and read more about these different studies on there. Now, one last study I think is important to talk about, since we were just talking about British researchers, is that British investigators assessed that adjunctive use on cannabis-based medicinal products in Britain with a cohort of 124 patients enrolled in the UK's medical cannabis registry, and they published this observational data in the journal PLOS Mental Health. And the British healthcare providers, they may actually prescribe cannabis-based medical products to patients that are unresponsive to conventional medications. The patient's outcomes were assessed at baseline, and at 1, 3, 6, 12, and 18 months, study participants consumed either herbal cannabis oil extracts containing standardized concentrations of THC and CBD, and consistent with other studies, participants reported improvements in their sleep quality, anxiety, depression, and health-related quality of life. Fewer than 1 in 10 participants reported an adverse event, most of which were categorized as mild or moderate, usually fatigue or dry mouth. Now, the authors say, quote, these findings indicate a promising association between cannabis-based medicinal product treatment and the improvement in sleep-specific outcomes and the general health-related quality of life measures. The studies say that they caution, however, the magnitude of participants' improvements declined over time, suggesting that some patients may become tolerant to the sleep-inducing effects of cannabis, and therefore there remains the need for high-quality randomized clinical trials to assess the long-term efficacy and safety of these cannabis medicinal products for primary insomnia. Look, we have seen placebo-controlled clinical data proving the same thing. We've seen multiple studies, even a 2025 study reporting sustained improvements for subjective sleep scores among state-registered medical cannabis patients over the course of a year. We know that medical cannabis works. When you hear politicians, when you hear other folks say we need to do more research, that's usually just an excuse to not take action in the immediate. What needs to happen right now is we need to have bold leadership that is willing to adopt medical cannabis and adult use cannabis policies that are right for the consumer, that are centric, patient-centric and consumer-centric, consumer-focused, not corporate-focused, not focused on a state-regimented arbitrary system with caps and getting involved in the patient-doctor relationship. And that translates into electing the right people for office, which is why the guest we have today is so important, because right now in the city of Tampa, we can elect a new state senator that obviously, one, has the balls to come on this show, and two, is willing to advocate for you, the cannabis consumer, and the medical patient for your rights, for your civil rights, and be a champion for you in the Florida State Senate in Tallahassee. So I am encouraging everyone out there in Tampa to make sure you pay attention, to make sure you go vote in the State Senate District Special Election, District 14. If you've never voted in your life, but you're registered to vote, go cast your ballot. Do not wait until these fall elections. You got one right now. Take a test run at it. See how it happens. Go vote by mail. If you haven't requested a vote by mail ballot, that's fine. They're already in the mail right now. So check to see if you're going to get one. If you're not, go to your local library when early voting starts in a couple of weeks and make sure you go out there and cast your ballot. Carlos, after hearing from Brian Nathan today, how are you going to vote in this election?
I mean, I don't know. I haven't decided yet. I am an informed voter, sir, and I am not completely informed on all the candidates. So I'm going to check out my normal smoke the vote voter guide.
Very good.
And I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to look to see how these politicians have voted in the past. And I'm going to get.
I do know that he is for political immunity for Pastafarians, which I think is important to you.
That's good. Pasta, I pray to mushrooms now, so
that's right. You're a fungideist.
I'm not pasta.
He's a fungitarian now.
I gotta change my
fungideist.
I gotta change my flying spaghetti monster tattoo to a mushroom.
Oh man, well look, I know it sealed the deal for me. I'm voting for Brian Nathan for state senate. So
yeah, I'm Brian Nathan all the way.
Yeah.
I do want to get one rant out before we close out today, and that is to all the state legislators across the country right now, and let them know that patients are not ATM machines. For all those states who want to get as many tax revenue out of this one product, that is discriminatory and it's punitive. There is no other product out there that has a separate tax structure that allows states to usurp a humongous amount of money out of folks who buy a product. And believe it or not, even though there are more recreational customers than there is medical patients, those medical patients are being punitized by having to give you extra money to the state to buy their medicine. and it needs to stop. It needs to stop in Michigan with their 24% wholesale tax, which is increasing it over there, and other states like Oregon and Washington, whose medical program essentially got wiped out. The program that allowed folks to buy stuff without having to pay taxes. Yep. Now they got to pay taxes just to get their medicine, and it's just got to stop. I don't know if anybody's listening to me on this one, but it's just got to stop.
No, Gary, you're right. I think it's important for us to realize that regardless of political party, you got one party's approach is to create a small regulated market, which goes against everything they advocate for publicly when it comes to free market economy, right? We call it the free state of Florida, but no one is free to operate in the medical cannabis sector. And then you look at other states and they want to, tax the medical cannabis program to plug holes in their overspending on other issues and other programs in their state. Neither of these approaches work. Neither political party seems to have at the highest levels their shit together when it comes to this, which is why we need to elect new leaders, which is why electing Brian Nathan is going to be so important, and putting people in office that are actually going to champion worker-centric, pro-patient-centric policies that are going to put the working class, the people who are sweating their ass off 9 to 5 first, the medical patients who are getting right now overly abused by the existing market and system first. And I think that we're in a good spot now, and we got to turn out and we got to vote.
You know what we need? A Suncoast NORML political party. We can make that happen.
All we need is a couple mil, possibly a bill.
I mean, if Republicans and Democrats ain't getting it done,
every single party starts with a party, and we got a big one coming up. It's our biggest one of the year.
Look at that segue,
best blunt
wow, what a
in
segue!
The Bay.
Yeah,
wow.
That's some sativa-based thinking right there.
It is going down at Chillum in St. Petersburg. Now, be aware, there's 2 Chillums, so don't show up to the one in Ybor City. Make sure you go to the one in 1916 Central Avenue in St. Pete. It is going to be Saturday, April 18th. The doors open at 7 o'clock. I'm excited because this year we have a new event which is open to the judges and the contestants who enter, and that is the Chillum Dabathon.
Here's the thing that I think you need to understand about what you just said, Kano. The judges just smoked how many blunts before the Dabathon?
Yeah.
I mean, how many? I mean, I guess it depends on how many people sign up for the best blend of the Bay contest.
When we had Javier Haas on a couple of days ago, he was talking about how people work as judges in these various cups, like the one in New York City where they just did.
Do they
do
it like
test 30 different products, at a sitting?
Oh,
yeah. Only you could possibly do that, Carlos.
Yeah, I know that for the High Times Cup, Javier mentioned that he was switching it up. He let folks take it home, and they had like a 2-3 week lead up to give their report back, rather than sticking someone in a room like we do for a couple of hours and just inundating them with blunts. So.
Could you imagine getting that box in the mail? Just having like 3 weeks where it's like, okay, my job is to smoke all of this weed and report.
Just officially, the U.S. Postal Service cannot ship an only state-sanctioned product. We're trying to say that right now.
All right, UPS.
Yeah.
DHL, whoever, right?
Flying tigers, and there's a reason why they're flying.
You know what I did before the show, guys? I ate a 100 milligram cushy pie.
Oh, nice.
Kick it in at the end of the show. I'm going to do this every show.
And Cushy Pies, which have always been a friend of the show, actually just restocked at their various Chillum locations. So get you a Cushy Pie while supplies last.
Thank you very much.
Because Carlos will eat them all if he doesn't sell them.
Absolutely. And a program note, Flying Spaghetti Monster, hopefully, we are going to have Carlos Guillermo Smith on, the predominant senator in Tallahassee, who's going to give us a wrap up as how this Senate has come and gone. Because by that point in time, it'll be just budget only kind of issues while they're waiting for the special session.
And we're
going to find out what exactly happened there.
And that's next week on March 1st.
That's March 1st.
Oh, really?
We got other candidates coming up. We got a candidate.
That's crazy to think that today is February 22nd, but next Sunday is March 1st. Wow.
Yeah.
Time
We do that
flies.
legislatively, I think.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited though. Carlos Guillermo Smith, from the jump, has been an ally to patients. From our first lobby day that we did in Tallahassee, in making sure that he was there to show up for us, all the way to champion the home grow bill this session. He has been there in his time, whether it's been in the state house or the state senate. He came to the Florida Democratic Cannabis Caucus launch party that I did that ended up getting shut down by hotel security because we had the entire hotel funky.
That summit we did in Orlando at the library.
Yeah, he came to
came out
the
for that.
Sunshine State Cannabis Conference that we did. Yes, indeed.
And I met him when he was a legislative aide.
He is
now a state senator. So that shows you how long we've been doing this stuff too.
Well, but I think it's important that we recognize, because we shit on a lot of politicians all the time. It's important to recognize the ones that have been down with us from Jump Street and getting it done. And so shout out to Carlos Guillermo Smith for doing that. We look forward to having him on the show next week. Well, Gary, any other thoughts or before we close out the show today?
Boy, there's so many in my mind right now. But we just need to go ahead and survive the fact that we have a possibility of a new Bay of Pigs coming up.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks, man. Any reason for us to go get high right now and think about the fact that we're on the verge of a third world war?
Well, remember, Florida is the closest state to Cuba.
Oh, well, yeah. I was thinking about the deployment of forces in the Middle East. I didn't even think about the fact that there's a possibility of invading Cuba in our own backyard at home. That's Carlos. I need to come home and do some dabs with you.
I'm also waiting for them to blame fentanyl for why we have to attack Cuba.
We got okay. So how about this? If we take over Cuba, should we go and start a Cuba NORML?
I am about it, route it like it's 1998, and we are no limit soldiers. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I am going to get a whole big new business selling car
that
parts.
becomes another U.S. state. I mean, granted, I don't want the suffering, and I'm against everything Trump is. I don't want to withhold resources from Cuba, but if that becomes a U.S. state, like all these guys in Miami are saying is going to happen, I'm moving there.
Bro, my great-grandfather left Cuba in 1930. But if we could start a hemp farm out in Oriente, outside of Santiago, absolutely, brother. We should go out there and make that happen, post-colonialism.
And we can bring salami to the island.
Shalom in Havana, bro.
Shalom Havana sounds really nice.
Yeah.
Really nice.
Oh, I thought you said Shalom Atlanta.
Well, I mean, it probably opened up right next door. So we'll see how that shakes out, Gary. We're going to need a social use lounge, right?
Absolutely.
That's a good name for a social use lounge, Gary. You should patent that. Shalom. That's a great name. Everybody should have peace and be welcome.
Yeah. And Tikkun Olam.
I love it.
Let's repair the world.
Yeah. Well, hey, if you're watching at home,
anything you guys are saying,
hit that like and subscribe button. Share this video. Of course, don't forget that we could always use you as a member to advocate alongside us. So like, comment, share, subscribe, become a member of Suncoast NORML. Make sure that you're getting out there and supporting your local cannabis activists. And again, come to the best blunt in the Bay. Follow us on Instagram, follow us on social media, visit our website, sign up for our email blast, and tune in next week to the rotation. And each and every Sunday at 11 a.m. And occasionally we'll even bring you some special episodes with some high-end elected leaders and industry luminaries. So I'm pretty excited for what we have on the horizon this year with the rotation. And with that, peace.